I'm Gideon Lichfield, and this is the Story Types module for the AI Spotlight course for editors. The reporting framework we just looked at basically identifies the key parts of the AI supply chain. It's especially useful for teasing out the key points in a story, particularly when you're doing longer features or investigations. Now, though, we'll look at some of the typical types of news stories published about AI every day, and some of the common patterns and pitfalls you may see in them. The first type is technical breakthroughs. There are lots of stories published daily about supposed leaps in AI progress. AI companies and researchers love to hype these. But the results can be essentially meaningless because everything depends on how a system is implemented in the real world. So, dial down the excitement. Don't simply report uncritically what an AI company said. When covering technical advances, look also for the limits of those advances. If a model achieved new levels of performance according to some benchmark or other, where does it run into a wall? Or what might be the limits of the benchmark itself? What does it not measure, for example? In the tips and tricks section later on, we'll suggest some questions to ask about what a breakthrough really means. The next type is product announcements. These two happen almost every day. You can't cover them all, and you shouldn't try. Choose ones that are relevant to your audience and find a specific angle on what this product means for them. Here, for example, we've got an education publication on using ChatGPT-4 as a tutor. There's an African news source covering the expansion of Google's AI platform into Kiswahili. The Hollywood Reporter talks about the implications of AI-generated video for the film industry. And a Mashable story finds a distinct angle on the news about creating songs in Microsoft Copilot, namely that there could be a copyright problem. Because the technology is still in its infancy, there are also endless stories about proof-of-concept applications of AI. For instance, helping people with locked-in syndrome, creating virtual avatars of people who've died, or deciphering ancient documents. These applications are often very cool indeed, but many of them will ultimately fail or won't scale. So by all means cover them, but emphasize that they are experimental. You often hear claims about long-term trends like how we'll all work less in the future, or how we'll eliminate all disease. These are almost always fanciful. Don't give them credence. Show people that there is debate and conflicting evidence about most of these projections. As AI gets put to work in more fields, try to cover how it's actually playing out, rather than what it might potentially achieve. Some of these are good news stories, for example, how it's helping workers, how it's being adapted to work in new cultures, or how it's benefiting the environment. The shortcomings are starting to show. Common obstacles include that it costs a lot to run, it's not accurate enough for the task at hand, or it can't do all the things people thought it would. What we're seeing in a lot of industries is that AI is shaving off some costs, saving some time, or automating certain tasks. But it's not transforming major processes or creating amazing new capabilities. AI for software development does seem to be different because computer code is pretty structured and predictable, so it's easier for AI to handle. Some software companies are laying off engineers or pausing hiring, but for most industries, it's still too early to know what the long-term effects will be. There is a lot of alarmism about AI. Some of it is warranted, like the risk of mass surveillance. Some is hype, like the talk of human extinction. So be judicious. Don't just repeat the dire warnings uncritically, but quote experts with other views as well. Also, you don't need to just report on hypothetical warnings of AI risk. There are increasingly actual facts, research studies like the first two stories here, and human stories like the third one, which show the impact of AI in practice. Report on those rather than the hypothetical risks. Stories about AI failures can be a lot of fun, but be careful. Too often these stories gloat at the embarrassment of the company that made the AI tool without illuminating why it went wrong. They also often treat the AI as being, in quotes, to blame, as if it had agency, rather than pointing out the responsibility humans have for the screw-up. Instead, then, try to delve into where the AI went wrong, and in particular where the boundary lies between human and computer error, as in the story here about a self-driving taxi having an accident, Or you could educate your readers about AI's limitations, as in this piece about what ChatGPT got wrong about Houston. The fact is, most of the biggest risks of AI are of people misusing it, not AI going rogue on its own. The first of these stories here is about someone using AI deliberately to generate online spam. The second is about how the Israeli military used an AI tool to identify Hamas targets in Gaza, but gave it parameters that led to a lot of innocent civilians being targeted too. Stories like these two serve to remind people that AI is a tool, not an independent entity making its own decisions. They make us think about the questions that really matter, which are not should these tools exist, but how should they be built? What safeguards need to be in place? How should they be used? And who should have access to them? When you're working on a bigger story, you can go back to the AI reporting framework we saw earlier and use it to help clarify which issues are at stake. In the piece about Gaza, for instance, there were issues of privacy and consent. The system Israel used appeared to build a kind of risk profile for every single person in Gaza using a huge trove of surveillance data. And there appeared to be biases and inaccuracies in the data, which led the tool to wrongly identify some people as combatants. Ultimately, it's AI policies that will shape how this technology gets used. Now, policy issues can be pretty dry, and that means newsrooms either run stories that aren't very interesting to many readers, or default to doing political horse race stories which don't really help the audience understand the underlying policy issues. So one good way to do policy stories is to frame them around the impact of the policy on people, like in this one about the Hollywood writers' strike. Or you could give the backstory on who's trying to influence the policy and what they stand to gain or lose, as in this piece about tech lobbying. Both allow you to include details of the policy itself, but show how they relate to real life. And ultimately, the best AI stories are about people. After all, this technology affects all of us. You can find the impact in pretty much any sector you want to look. This is especially useful for local newsrooms and trade or community publications. Stories about how AI affects your community or your industry are going to resonate the most with your audience. So how do you find these AI impact stories? It's pretty simple. Ask your reporters to talk to community organizations, unions, schools, human rights groups, and so on to ask what they're seeing among their members. Or have the reporters talk to workers and people further down the supply chain who might be feeling the unintended consequences of an AI deployment. One of the common reasons things go bad is that an AI system was designed to satisfy a client, like a police force or a corporation, but it didn't take into account all the people it will affect, citizens or workers. Again, the AI reporting framework we used earlier can help make this clear. Like in any other area of coverage, lawsuits can be great sources for AI stories. Court documents can provide information you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. Companies can be forced to reveal the inner workings of their systems. The good news is you don't always need an in-depth investigation to test an AI model's limitations. Sometimes just a conversation with a chatbot will reveal its flaws, as with the New York Times' widely read piece on Microsoft's Bing. A little experimenting with prompts by Wired confirmed that the right-wing US social network Gab had deliberately configured its chatbots to deny the Holocaust. And a simple trick that a BuzzFeed reporter played on his mother vividly illustrated the dangers of voice cloning. That's the end of this module. Next up, tips and tricks for editing AI stories.